Pour something flammable into your glass. It's Jaded Gamercast. My name is Lang. With me, as always, is Nathan. Nathan, it's been a month. There's a bit of a stretch there where I was wondering, is this going to happen? It just seems to keep happening.
Yeah, because again, like it's funny because like I didn't realize it'd been a month, and then you texted me like yesterday. You're like, "Hey, you want to do this on Friday?" I'm like, "Yes, absolutely."
Hell yes, yes indeed. I'm drinking a homemade old fashioned. What are you drinking?
I got a couple things going on. I had half a pot of decaf coffee left, so I'm just drinking that with a salted caramel liqueur creamer. And then once I'm out of that, I've got a bottle of local-ish Niagara region wine.
Perfect. Yeah, my backup is it's called an Equinox Mule, which is apparently an Alberta-made Moscow mule.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So does it replace the like milk with? Or no, well, milk is White Russian.
Yeah, that's White Russian. No.
Where do we get the bitumen though?
The mule is like ginger, tonic, vodka, all that kind of shit, lime. So yeah, there you go. Okay, we're just gonna dive right in because that's what we do here by talking about models and our views on them. Of course, the link will be posted with the video, as well as on the Facebook group, so you can look at the model yourself and follow along. Nathan, you've been choosing the models, so go ahead and introduce these guys here.
All right, so these guys are Jesus Christ, there are a lot of names here. I'm just going to read off the posting description. Dark Angels, Legion, Inner Circle Knights, Cenobium, Canobium. I don't know, is it a hard C or a soft C?
At this point, it's an acronym. They're the Daleks,
right? Jesus. Okay, so I wanted to share these because I find that Forge World has two kinds of models. They hit it out of the park, or they really don't. Obviously, these are Dark Angels. This is Horse Heresy line, obviously. And so the reason we're starting to see a whole lot more Dark Angel stuff coming out is they've announced that their next campaign book, whatever, is going to be the Thramas campaign of the Dark Angels and the Night Lords going toe to toe. So as someone who loves the Night Lords, that's some good news. But Dark Angels didn't have a Horus Heresy presence before this, so we're starting to kind of get the floods. And this is the better of the two units that they've shown so far. Why they couldn't call them Deathwing Terminators? Fucking beyond me.
Interesting.
Because, like, they are wearing Cataphracti pattern Terminator armor.
Yeah. I mean, sure. I didn't actually realize they were in Terminator armor until you said it.
Sure.
There's just a lot of shit going on here covering up the armor.
Oh my God, so much covering up the armor. All right, so the reason why I said, like, there's both good and bad here is I want to go on the record and say that this is the first hooded sculpt that I like. Like, I legit like the hoods. The hoods add to this model. Unlike the fucking, like, bathrobes, like, Big Lebowski style fucking Marines.
Right.
Where it's like, no, I'm not Brother Lamartes. I'm just the dude. Like, yes. Come on. I'm not Brother Lebowski.
Brother Lebowski.
But, like, the hoods
Dark
genuinely
the inner circle, man.
Right. So I like that.
So for you, the hoods really pull the models together.
No, I never said that. I said I like the hood. The problem is like I said, this is what I mean, where I'm like, there are elements of these models that look really, really great. And when you zoom in on, like, the parts of the sculpts that aren't holy fuck over the top, they're great. The Sergeant has so many wings, just so goddamn many wings. He has 2 backpack wings. He has a chest wing. He has smaller chest wing, maybe like neck wings.
Yeah, he's got bolter wings.
Bolter wings. He's got shin wings. Like, holy shit, we get it. Angels have wings.
Okay. My first reaction to these as before we started recording and you sent me the picture was, oh wow, oh okay. There's just it's far too much going on. Every time I look at the model, I see something new, and every time I look at the model, I see something I don't like. And it's frustrating in many ways, in the ways that we sort of tend to talk about these types of models with, where we could sort of say like, man, what were they thinking? Like, why do they feel like they need to go this far? And I feel like that's sort of a played out thing to say when we're talking about models like these, because like, I get it. You can only make the same power armor so many times, or the same sort of Terminator armor so many times, without people going like, oh, they look just like the other ones, except, one pair of wings on the shoulders. But I like that.
I was going to say, you have to remember, we started playing when the Dark Angels Codex was a fucking 15-page supplement to the Space Marines Codex that said, paint your Space Marines green, and then you can also use these special rules.
Yeah, there were some special characters.
Dark Angels were the only ones that got freaking plasma cannons.
Yep.
Like that was their thing. Okay, so the reason I wanted to talk about this is like I really do feel like the Sergeant is absolutely fucking distracting. He is so bad. The Sergeant is everything that is horrifyingly wrong about this unit. If you if you get to their 360 view,
sure,
you will get the view of the 4 regular Terminators, and all of a sudden these look really nice. And this is why I want to talk about it, because I even told you, I'm like, this is right down the middle where there's a whole lot of like, holy shit, what were you thinking? But there's also like, I kind of dig that. So when you're looking at just the Terminators, you've got the freaking typical 40K aesthetic where you basically got like angel wings on the chest, which I'm totally down with, because how many Aquillas have we ever had? Yeah. It's really just a stylized version of that. It's fantastic. You got some light leg detailings. Their belts aren't laden, like overloaded with shit. The weapons look super cool. Really, it's just that left pectoral Dark Angel sword wing bit that kind of ruined this whole aesthetic for me. But honestly, like I'd pop,
shield, the heraldry shield, whatever it is.
I'd honestly just pop that off, and then you've got like 4 really nice, really smart, very clearly Dark Angels, Cataphract Terminators.
Yeah.
And I think that really, really works. And then by comparison, then you click the motherfucking Sergeant, and you get his 360 view, and it just gets worse. Like this, like the Sergeant is so bad. Like,
he's got a belt loop with keys to secret places, like you don't know where these keys go, like, but oh man,
you know how have you ever heard the term where it's just like, you love Harry Potter as much as Harry Potter did when naming his kids? Albus Severus Dumbledore. That's how this feels with Dark Angels, like this Sergeant model, where it's just like, if you imagined the biggest Dark Angels fan in the world and what they wanted, like this is a guy pretending to be the biggest Dark Angels fan, and it just, oh my god, the wings on the backpack. And again, if you look at everything else there, like the little skull with the iron halo, that's all fine. Like that all works if you clip the wings off. But oh look, the wings are like, each wing has a foot that's grasping the iron halo, so you can't even do that nicely. And you're like, why does his ornamentation have feet? And it's just like, there are swords on his cape, like little keychains. He's got sword keychains that are on skulls, mini skull. Like, it just, this is the model. And when you first land on this page and you get that group shot, because this is the model that's front and center, it just draws your eye. And that's when you're like, holy shit, what?
I think for me, what really hurts these models a lot is not that they're bad, like it's a bad idea, because I think the Terminator armor and some of the pieces are really good. It is just a case of how many zippers is too many zippers.
You're going to need at least one more zipper.
You need at least one more zipper, okay? If you haven't watched the Orville, it's fucking great. But that said, that's really what it comes down to for me. Is it's like you're sitting there. I'm sure the modeler was sort of wondering, like, it's still too plain. Like my big question is like, what did he take off? Because he was like, that's one too many zippers. Like, that's one too many wings. You know what I'm saying? Like, what was it that came away from this model to have it end where it is now? It's too distracting to the point where, like I said, I couldn't even tell what type of armor they were wearing. I couldn't tell that they were Horus Heresy. When you said that, that was a surprise to me. I thought this was like something new in the 40K universe. I was very confused, and this model is very confusing. If I looked at these models, I would think maybe they're Dark Angels, but I wouldn't have put that there because they're all in red, and it's like the colors are different. And
you know what? You're right, because, you know, in this era, Dark Angels wore black, but there is so much red ornamentation on them that they do really come off like, as red Marines.
Could be Blood Angels.
Also, if they're inner circle, like, you know, listen, I don't give a shit about Dark Angels. I think they're the least interesting of all of the legions. So I'm sure. And listen, there is a Dark Angels fan already typing hate mail. That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Listen,
but like,
they're
why
not the worst.
Is he in bone? Like, you know, because like again, that is always been one of the things that, like, you know, the Raven Wing, they kept the black of their original livery.
Yeah. Hold on though, Nathan. I do want, just for the sake of saying it, I don't know if we've ever said it before on the podcast. I think you and I both agree on who the worst Space Marine chapter is. I think we should say it on 3. Okay, ready?
All right.
1, 2, 3. Salamanders.
Dark Angels.
I thought it was Salamanders, man. Fuck.
Oh no! Listen, Dark Angels have always been my least favorite. I mean, Salamanders, they're green, and that's about the extent of their identity.
They're green and they like fire. That's it.
But like, you know, Dark Angels, literal traitors.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, we don't know how that story ends just yet, I don't think, but we'll see what happens. But back to the models. Would I buy these? Nope. And that's sort of what... Now, again, I don't play miniatures games anymore, so there's definitely a large part of me that just sort of looks at this and goes, fuck, that's every reason why I don't play miniatures games anymore. But I have to give them credit for the fact that it's a unique-looking model, and I like the swords.
Mm-hmm.
I think the swords are very cool. I like the sort of like long handle. I like the idea that they can sort of two-hand it. It's extra long because absolutely they don't have the length to like grab a sword properly and swing it with any sort of like, you know, given the size of their armor and shit. But I could only imagine fighting in this armor. Like you go like haul your sword back to swing it at some dude and it catches on a pair of your wings. You know, like there's more parts falling off like of your armor from the power sword swinging back and forth than their armor. Just because of all your baubles and shit. Your keyring gets busted, fucking secret keys go flying everywhere. It's fucking, it's just awful. Maybe they just put all this crap on their armor to cover up all the like gashes and holes from like having to fight in this shitty armor. It doesn't do anything for me. I think that, yeah, the Terminators look way better, but that's just our view on sergeants and headless or helmetless models to begin with.
Well, I mean, like, listen, it's not, but like the sergeant not wearing a helmet, which again, yes, we both have very strong opinion on helmetless Marines. It's not the not wearing a helmet that ruins that model. Like, even if he was wearing a helmet, I would hate that sergeant model. But yeah, like that's the thing is I'm just like, for me, I do really dig the basic Marines. Clip off that left shoulder pad one. And you've got a really cool looking squad. And how many times do we have a Games Workshop model where I can say, clip off only one thing, and it's an amazing miniature?
Yeah.
This is a benchmark for them.
I think that's true. It is a very middle of the road squadron. I think that somebody is going to love them, and I think most people would probably look at them and say, "Hey, that's a cool model," you know. But yeah, for me, again, we're very. What would you call it?
Jaded?
Not just jaded. I mean, yes, that's definitely part of it. More so now than ever for me. But like, we're purists in that Space Marine way where you're just like, listen, right. Space Marines wear armor. It's basic armor, okay? You don't need, you know, maybe a couple of laurels, a few purity seals, you know, maybe a dude's got a banner, sure, right? A little bit of personality, right? Mm-hmm. It's the sort of thing where when I see this, I just go like, what are these guys trying to prove? Like, what is this? Mm-hmm. Like, you know, the custodes are looking at these guys like, yo, tone it down a little bit, guys. Like, I think it's just a little bit overkill. But yeah, they're.
Oh yeah, like that's the big
I like the
thing,
swords.
Though.
That's all I got.
I remember, again, we started playing when Games Workshop couldn't make fancy minis. And I remember when that first Black Templars upgrade sprue came out, we're just like, holy cow, look how amazing this is. There's like a chest piece with a different thing. That's so crazy. Whereas now they're really just like, yeah, I get it, guys, tone it down. Holy shit, tone it down. Oh my God. How many wings is too many wings? Because you're definitely at too many zippers.
It's at too many zippers, yeah, without a doubt. All right, let's move on to our next topic. So I'm going to take us off of a bit of a tangent off the last episode where we talked about the Rise of Skywalker for an entire episode's worth of time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was the runtime of Rise of Skywalker.
It was almost the runtime of Rise of Skywalker. Yeah.
Shit.
It was a solid 90 minutes. Like, it was a lot. To talk about Disney and Lucasfilm's newest, most amazing, most interesting idea for how to bring the Star Wars franchise in a bold new direction and help people forget about Rise of Skywalker and this horrific new trilogy. And they've chosen quite literally the worst option. They've decided to go with prequels 2.0, which not
good prequels like Darth Revan.
No, that's Old Republic.
Not the ones we've asked for.
No, everybody has been asking for Old Republic. Everybody, anybody who knows about Old Republic is like, please, for the love of God, make a Knights of the Old Republic movie or make an Old Republic series. We want the Old Republic. And the reason why people want the Old Republic is pretty straightforward. It's like 5,000 years in the past, so there's zero connection to the existing movies. There's no characters, there's no follow through. But what's interesting about it is, like, this is a time of discovery. Most of the galaxy isn't explored. The Jedi Order is just sort of getting its feet wet and just sort of getting things going. They didn't have all of these like monastic rules like they did before. They're like, yeah, fuck it, get married, have sex with people. We don't really mind.
Well, like the Sith existed as an empire.
Yeah.
So like it was almost as if like, you had to pick your fucking school and your safety school if you were force sensitive.
Well, exactly. And it was one of those things where it wasn't just that the dark side was evil and that the Sith were evil. It was that the dark side was an other path to exploring the Force. It was the fact that like there were people who were part of the Sith and part of the dark side who were just like, no, the dark side is how you access the Force. Like, this is how this shit works. And the sort of corrupting influence of it was still very new. And a lot of it was still very like, no, it's all different points of view. They're two sides of the same coin. But like that era of discovery and that era of like unknown and like new stories and the opportunity to like see things differently, that's what people wanted. And instead of the Old Republic, we got the slightly less New Republic. And it's just fucking awful. So if you haven't heard about the High Republic, their whole idea for the next new age of Star Wars, starting with books and comics, is going to take place 200 years before the prequels. Which means we're going to get all the same set pieces from the prequels. It's going to be the Jedi Temple. It's going to be the Master's Temple. It's going to be Coruscant. It's going to be all the things we saw already.
Yoda.
Yeah.
Yoda's 900 years old, man.
Yeah, we're going to see Yoda, and I guarantee you we're going to see Sidious. Or not Sidious, but fucking Plagueis. Like, and that's what bothers me about this. Like, you want to tell new stories and you want to do something different. You have to take the route like Picard, where you're just like, listen, it's time to move the story forward, and we're either going to focus on a character or we're going to genuinely tell some new stories, but like looking forward. Instead, you're going to take the word, and this is part of the reason why I can kind of understand it. You're going to take what is sort of universally looked at as the worst part of Star Wars, the prequels, and you're like, listen, it's not hard to make these better. We can just do them better. Like,
right.
Don't get me wrong. There was some good things about the prequels. There's some good things about that era of the Republic. So fuck it. Why not? Let's just make better prequels. But nobody wanted that. No, I feel like I've got my finger on the pulse, Nathan. I feel like I have it on the pulse when it comes to Star Wars. Nobody fucking said more prequels. Nobody.
Nobody has asked for stories in this era. But I know why Disney picked it, right?
Oh.
no, but like you have to look at it and keep in mind that this decision, because if you watch it, they were having that writers meeting where they were starting to workshop all these ideas.
Well, I got some stuff about that writers
meeting in 2018, right? So we know that this is before Rise of Skywalker flops.
Yes.
But like basically what they wanted is they wanted an opportunity to pick an era that had a shitload of Jedi in it, but it was also a blank canvas. The reason they don't go pick the Old Republic as a setting is because Knights of the Old Republic is so iconic that anything they do there that isn't a retelling of the Revan story is just going to give them shit online because there are too many fucking man babies.
Like what they did with the expanded universe.
Basically, where they're just like, zip, it's all gone.
Yep.
There are too many fucking crying man babies online that are just going to do nothing but take the piss out of them on YouTube nonstop, and you don't need that shit. So what did they want? They wanted a setting that still had more than like a dozen Jedi because, let's be real, if you watch all of the prequels, there's like 30 of them. And I'm like, even throughout the Clone Wars show, you're just like, did they stop recruiting? Like, the Jedi Order was really easy to wipe out because they really just stopped recruiting. Like, did they stop going to college campuses? Like,
well, no, they were, it was just, they were spread out throughout the galaxy is basically what it came down to. And then during the Clone Wars, a lot of them died. But again, I'm not going to like explain it away.
No. I totally get it. I'm just
like
being a dick.
Yeah, I get that. The man babies comment let me in on that part. Yeah.
Right. But no, like, but realistically, they don't want to touch the Old Republic because the Old Republic is going to be toxic. Because if they do anything that isn't Revan, then congratulations, the internet is just going to bitch and moan the way they've bitched and moaned about every single fucking thing Disney has ever done. Like, honestly, there are idiots out there that call The Last Jedi the worst Star Wars film, and I'm like, excuse you, Episode 2 exists.
I'm one of those idiots. It is the worst Star Wars film.
It is impossible because Episode 2 exists. Like, the prequels are so bad, they have to redefine the badness scale. And even if you hate The Last Jedi, objectively, you can sit through The Last Jedi. Objectively, you cannot sit through Episode 2. This isn't a hard choice.
I did it. I went through. Kanan wanted to rewatch all of them. Kanan's my son. And we watched them. And I enjoyed Episode 2 more than I enjoyed The Last Jedi.
Oh, you are so wrong because my daughter wanted to do the same. She barely made it through Phantom Menace. And then she fell asleep during Attack of the Clones, which I had to literally be on my phone ignoring to endure. It is so
Attack of the Clones is terrible, man. It's a bad movie.
It is the worst.
Anyways,
Star Wars
we're talking about the High Republic.
Fine.
I do disagree in the sense that I feel like there's nothing but toxicity in the Old Republic. I think the Old Republic is still a narrow enough piece of Star Wars that is a much smaller vocal group who are like really into it, into the Old Republic. And I mean, you've played the Old Republic, so if they made an Old Republic movie and they didn't do Revan, like, would you be upset?
No, but
neither would I.
I'm not like, listen, I can take the piss out of Rise of Skywalker for being a mediocre movie.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna go online and be a fucking racist, misogynist asshole spewing hate on the internet. So
but they're doing that anyways. Like, they're doing that with Picard. Like, the amount of people who fucking hate Picard blows my mind. Like, the comments and the videos that I've watched where they're like, and then they introduced this chick, immediately a Mary Sue, fucking doing backflips and shit. It's like, yo, spoilers, by the way, she's a fucking android, dude. Like, what are you even talking about? She can't be a Mary Sue because she's not a person. Like, go fuck yourself. Like, what are you talking about? I think those people are going to be that way no matter what. And I don't think they speak for the vast majority of Star Wars fans. And I think that when you look at something like The Last Jedi, which is pretty 50-50 in terms of who likes it and who hates it, and Rise of Skywalker, where pretty much everybody was like, it's not good, but like, it has some moments. I think that focusing on the vocal minority is not helping things. And with the High Republic, this is just a terrible era to tell Star Wars stories because this is the era of peace and justice. Like, we're going to see Jedi settling border disputes.
Freaking Star Piece is really what it is.
Yeah, like, this is a terrible time.
I agree, but I do want to revisit the toxicity thing because they don't get that shit with Marvel. And Marvel has painted their perceptions of what it is. You look at fucking Endgame is the highest grossing film ever.
Yes.
You look at all of this shit. And so you look at success after success after success on Marvel and what Disney is trying to do, because all they want is the safe bet, is they want to thread that fucking needle where they don't get the shitty trolls taking away from their box office returns. You have to understand that this is 100% what Disney wants. Mm-hmm. So how do you achieve that? You achieve it by inventing an era. Now, like you said, peace and justice. This is literally the worst setting, which is even why they had to invent the Great Disaster, which, good God, like, could you not have thought of a better name?
Yeah. I like how they introduced the bad guys, and they're called the Nile. They're like space Vikings, and I'm like, wait, are they raping? Is that what's happening, or are they like space Vikings in sort of the way that they just like to kill people? Because they're not really like space Vikings then.
Right.
Yeah, and again, I do understand it. Like, again, I think it's the worst choice, but I do understand it. And the only reason why I say that is because there's no interesting story you can tell in that era that can't be told in any other Star Wars era.
Yes, and that's 100%. They are inventing a villain. So you could literally take that and say, hey, because we decanonized the entire extended universe, we're going to set this 100 years after the fucking Rise of Skywalker.
Right.
We've got new Jedi Knights. We've got all of this shit, whatever it is. And look, it's a new threat. They're called the Nile. Like, you literally could have picked any place that was temporally separate.
Yeah.
Especially because we know, if you don't want to run into like the whole like, and they're going to fucking do it. We're going to be like, oh my God, look, it's Bail Organa's great grandfather. Yep. But like, it's
not a blank canvas.
The Skywalker line is extinct. The Palpatine line is extinct. The Solos are extinct. You literally could have gone ahead in time.
Yeah. There's no reason not to push the story forward. And this is what really bothers me. And this is what bothered me about Rise of Skywalker and that whole trilogy itself, is that it leaves you with nothing at the end. Like, all you really know is Rey has a lightsaber. That's it. Like, there's nothing. There's nothing there. Do Star Wars The Next Generation, jump forward 200 or 300 years, and tell some new stories, and really build on what had been put down before you. Like, when we talked about the idea of, like, Rian Johnson focusing on, like, hey, when the Force is out of balance, it just fucking makes new Jedi and new Sith, and like, this is how it works. It's nature. It's balance. Like, this is the point of it. And like, it fits and it works, but like, let's see what happens there. When you say 200 years before the prequels, and I fucking hate prequels. I'm so sick of them. Like, again, this is part of the reason why I hate this. I don't care, because none of these characters mean anything, because I don't know their names now, right? Like, this is what bothers me. If I don't know any of these characters' names now, I know they're not important, and I know it doesn't matter, and it's not interesting. The only reason why movies like Rogue One get away with it is because Rogue One is like, you know what, we're going to answer a question nobody asked, but it's an interesting one. There you go.
Well, yeah, because
where'd the plans come from?
Not only where did the plans come from? Like, where did the plans come from? Why did that one torpedo in an exhaust vent actually work? And why the fuck would the Empire build a second one? And like, I never even realized that I wanted to know the answer to that question, because again, like, Return of the Jedi comes out, you're just like, a second Death Star, why not? You blew up Alderaan, let's fucking get it. But then when you find out, like, oh, they're building one without a fatal flaw, and you're like, oh shit. And so Rogue One was able to deftly kind of do that balancing act where it's going between the familiar and the new, and it was telling a story that had impact on the familiar, while not just being nostalgia porn.
Yeah, well, and again, like, I'm enjoying the Fantastic Beasts. They're not great. It's not the best Harry Potter, but they're enjoyable. And but again, because they're prequels, I'm not invested in anybody. I'm not invested in any character. And this is always going to be the problem when you decide that you want to tell prequels, is that you're telling a story that I'm not invested in. It just doesn't matter. The reason why The Mandalorian sort of works is because The Mandalorian is not telling you a story that has anything to do with what what's already happened or what's already going on out there. Mm-hmm. Like, there is a tie to Yoda in the sense that there's a little baby, but like, it's telling its own story on its own. And it's telling it during an era where we don't have any stories. Like, there's no stories in those 30 years, right? And like, that's why it works, is because you're still, in a way, moving the story forward in some way. Part of what I want to talk about here is when you watch the video, I don't know if you got a chance to pause it and take a look at what was written on their whiteboards.
I never cared enough to try.
Well, we're going to go over it because there's some interesting stuff on there that I feel is going to give us a pretty good idea of what we're going to be getting, or maybe getting, when it comes to the High Republic. So they've split this whiteboard into 3 sections. The first one is just labeled fiction. And then the middle one is labeled Star Wars with a heart. So I'm assuming it's what we love about Star Wars. And then the last one is Star Wars wishes. Okay, so let's go through the first one, fiction. Now, these are authors, these are writers, these are people who have been involved in Star Wars fiction for a long time. So the one at the top of the list is authentically lived in. And I think that makes sense, because that was one of the biggest complaints about the prequels, was that when we went to Tatooine, shit was too clean. It doesn't look like people live there.
That was a complaint? No, I don't think anyone was that nitpicky.
Oh, yeah.
It was more like the story structure makes no sense. These characters are flat. What do you mean he made C-3PO? And I guess also uploaded all of the Republic's language laws to prevent him from translating Sith in the future. No one was just like, oh, the problem with Tatooine is it's clean.
It was.
There were too many other problems.
Okay.
That's like your car being on fire and you just being like, I think there's a tail light that's also out. Shit,
maybe
that looked at. That's the problem. Fix the tail light.
Okay.
Fuck.
It's a focus for them because it's top of the list, Nathan. The second one on the list is surprise. Apparently, surprise is a core part of fiction. I feel like surprise is a core part of any storytelling, but hey, sure, why not? The third core part of fiction that they want to underline is diversity. Because fiction isn't fiction without diversity. And then they had a funny one. It said actual ending. Which I thought, boy, I feel like somebody in this room knows a little bit about what the fuck's going on with this Rise of Skywalker movie coming down the pipe, eh? Or, they're just used to seeing some J.J. Abrams. They've been in too many J.J. Abrams meetings.
I was gonna say, if it was fucking September of 2018, then they were already doing the majority of principal filming by that point. So I think
they've been sitting in some meetings. Yeah.
Yeah, they knew.
One thing that they feel is really important in fiction is feelings. Really important in fiction. After that is relatable characters, which, harkens to what you were saying about the prequels, which I can't necessarily argue with for the most part. I think that there are some, but not many. I feel Watto's pretty relatable. Anakin, there's some guys who owe me a lot of money. Maybe you could go rough them up. Where is my mother? Oh. Well, I feel like Watto's just the unsung hero of the prequels. And then the last thing they have under fiction is sweeping and epic. So great shit right there. Let's talk about what they love about Star Wars. Top of the list, not pro-war.
What?
It's what they love about Star Wars is that it is not pro-war.
Are we sure this wasn't a Star Trek
writer? No, it's Star Wars specifically. Under not pro-war, droids. Okay, all right. Top of the list there. Scope, mythic, and then some guy actually chimed in and was like, I think it's the space and lightsaber battles. And I was like, holy fuck, somebody kind of understands what's going on here. And then there's a bit that says no single character, and it's like no single, and there's like brackets, and I can't read what's in between, but it just says no single blank character. So I'm assuming that it means like no single main character or like no single, I don't know. And then the last thing they love about Star Wars is the Force.
I was gonna say it's definitely no single main character, something along those lines, because Star Wars is a very like entourage-y story, which is why we talked about like how Rise of Skywalker failed, because like they had the three main characters and they were just never together. Yes. Well, I mean that was true of like every episode, like episode 7 and 8 they were never together, and then in episode 9 they were, and we were supposed to believe that they were best friends, having spent 11 minutes together.
I would say respectively like a solid 3 hours.
So
now let's move on.
Not a Lord of the Rings extended edition viewing part. What you're saying, like they got around to watch Frodo.
I feel like the actors knew each other better than the characters. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Star Wars wishes. Believe it or not, top of the list, the High Republic. Weird, huh?
Wow.
Yeah. Below that, relic hunters. You know, get yourself some Tia Carrere and fucking make that shit happen. Give her a lightsaber. All right. I want it. I want that right now.
Unique, bumbling male sidekick with glasses. God. He needs the glasses.
100%. But yes, I think relic hunters on its own is a better idea. Because again, it's good no matter which area you tell it in. And then below that, it's hard to read, but I believe it says university. Like they want like Force College, like crazy shit. And there's another thing that comes up later that makes me think they really do want Force College, but we'll get to that when we get to it.
Okay, because I'm like, I don't know, man. Yeah. Like fucking Tatooine Tech?
Something like that. Yeah, exactly. It's what it seems like. I believe it says university. Below that, number 4 on the list with an exclamation point behind it, dinosaurs.
Do you think that they're just fucking with us knowing the camera is there?
No, I don't. I think this is fucking serious. Oh my God.
I don't know. That like I was on board serious until we got to dinosaurs.
Yeah, dinosaurs with an exclamation point. Below dinosaurs, representation and diversity. Because in a futuristic universe far, far away, where there are myriad numbers of different aliens of all shapes and sizes, there aren't enough Mexicans.
No, listen.
I'm not talking about representation. I get that. I don't have a problem with it. I do genuinely feel like Star Wars could benefit from more representation. If you understand what I mean by representation. But diversity is fucking stupid.
I don't know, though. Probably the most poignant Star Wars anything was when SNL had the freaking had Donald Glover on playing Londo, hosting the Galaxy like Black.
Londo was from Battlestar Babylon 5. You fuck.
Really,
Lando.
Whatever.
You fuck. Sorry. Go ahead.
And yeah, it was an SNL skit where he was hosting the Black People's Convention in the Galaxy. It was just an empty hall and him. And so, acknowledging that not only white people exist is a problem 40K hasn't addressed yet.
Well, I think 40K sort of tried to address it when they're just like, listen, all the races have blended together. They're all just sort of tan. Like, and that was sort of their whole like way of explaining it away was just like, listen, we're 40,000 years in the future. Everybody's fucked each other. Everybody's just sort of tan now, okay? Like that's it. We're done. No, I think representation, I'm absolutely for. The diversity thing, I get a kick out of because it is you can basically make that argument about everything. It's either too much one way or too much the other way, and I've never seen anything where I go, oh, that is perfect representation across the board right there. Can you believe it? That's perfect. It just doesn't work that way, and like again, they're making a film toward the audience that is buying the most tickets, right? This is why we have a Chinese character in every movie now, okay? This is what they're doing. Below that, Ancient Legends, I believe is what it says, which is like, okay, Sure. Ancient Legends. Old Republic. I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then below that, rival houses. That's why I think they want that university. They want Star Wars Hogwarts. They're gonna put that Sorting Hat on, and it's gonna put you in Slytherin.
Have tremendous rivalries, when it comes to sports ball. Like fucking man. The Tatooine Tech Dewbacks.
Yeah, there it is, dude. All right, Tatooine Tech Dewbacks. I need that shirt. Below that,
same thing. After I said it, I was like, "Fuck, I'd wear that."
Yeah, 100%, without a doubt. Like a dewback wearing a football helmet. That's what I want. Below that, the one guy in the room who seems to get it put Sith Empire. Yeah, almost at the bottom of the list. And then below that, inexplicably, Chaos Agents.
Sure.
Yeah. Fuck okay, sure. So there's the taste of the High Republic for all y'all to get a little dip in the pool when it comes to Lucasfilm and Disney's bold new direction for Star Wars. I'm very curious to see people's comments. And you know what I love about this podcast, Nathan, and why it's so good, is that you and I are polar opposites on a lot of these things, but we get a good time. We enjoy it. Having a good conversation. We don't hate each other. There's too much hate in the world.
Oh, is that where we're settling on?
I don't know.
I mean, like,
fucking...
I get that Disney wants a blank slate to tell stories in. I'm just perplexed on why it's the High Republic. Like, they're like, we want to tell stories with lots of Jedi. Well, all the Jedi are gone, sir. Fuck. What if in the future, well, who would have taught them? Rey Palpadopoulos retired on Tatooine. She ain't opening a school. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll go in the past then. Old Republic, we want to talk about the Sith, right? Legends? Why don't we just, tell those stories of things that became legends? Nah, too interesting.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fuck.
Well, here's the thing, is I genuinely feel like it is just the safest bet that they could come up with. I think saying 200 years before the prequels is like, listen, there's no way it could be worse than the prequels, so no matter what we do, people are going to like it better. Like there's the bar is set so fucking low here that anything we do would work. And not to mention the fact that you already have a framework, you already have a setting, you already have something that is familiar to not only the writers, but to the readers and the viewers, to the point where it's deceptively easy to make any story within that framework. And that is the problem. The problem is I'm going to start, whether I don't know if I'm going to be reading it or watching it, but if this is where the movies start coming out of, like this is where fucking Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are making their film trilogy or something like that, like I'm going to be kind of disappointed because I feel like it's just too close to Star Wars as we know it. And that's the problem. Mm-hmm. You need to get the fuck away. The reason why the Old Republic works is it's 5,000 years in the past, and it's at a time when nobody knows the rules, nobody understands what's going on, and nobody has like, well, this is the way we've done it forever. It's like, yo, last week, fucker, did you see he used his mind to lift a rock? That shit was fucking crazy. Yeah. Like that's the shit I want to see. That's what I want to see, that age of discovery. I don't want to see fucking old and busted Clone Wars 2.0, like I just don't care.
Yeah.
It means nothing to me. And that is always going to be the problem with High Republic as a setting.
I mean,
and dinosaurs, Nathan.
Dinosaurs. Listen, man, bring in the fucking Tatooine Tech Dewbacks and I'm in. No, it's just listen, I've got to go back to what we talked about last episode. Rise of Skywalker is so bad that my fuck bank for Star Wars is just overdrawn. Yeah. Like when you were like, oh, we're going to talk about this, I'm just like, shit, I haven't even watched the announcement because I genuinely just do not care about Star Wars anymore. Hopefully Star Wars as a setting is going to be interesting. And I think as soon as they can divorce themselves from what has come before, like you said, tell new stories, that'll be good. So while I'm not hopeful that going back 200 years to the point where, as you rightfully pointed out, nothing anyone does will matter because no one's ever talked about any of it ever. Like, I doubt that it's going to be the thing that kind of gets it, but like Star Wars as a setting for sci-fi to tell real stories has potential, but I don't know. I just feel like this whole, like, we're going to launch it with books and comics is Disney's way of saying that in order to enjoy their next upcoming feature film, I have to give them $300 worth of book purchases.
Well, and here's the thing.
That's where this feels like, to me, I feel as if this is just a cash grab. The way that Rise of Skywalker makes no sense unless you also buy the visual dictionary, which costs $50. And pour through that in order to catch all of the Easter eggs that JJ shat in.
Did you see the like cliff notes of that visual dictionary?
No.
Dude, it's fucking horrible. There is nothing about Palpatine. There's nothing about Exegol. There's nothing about Kylo Ren. It is a bunch of fucking nonsense that basically says that the reason why Rey knew how to fly the Millennium Falcon is that while she was living on Jakku, the long defunct flight simulators on the crashed powerless Star Destroyers were still functional, and she just did a lot of flight sims.
Well, there was also the
You want to know how Maz Kanata got Luke's lightsaber?
How?
It fell into some junk. Somebody found it, and she bought it.
Wow, that's terrible. I was gonna say, at least it makes the line, like Billy D. Williams's line at the very end, seem less rapey.
Yeah,
because it turns out
we go find out together.
He had, we will find out together. Because at first you're like deeply uncomfortable, but then that encyclopedia, the visual dictionary, is just like, oh no, he has a daughter her age who was kidnapped by the First Order, and you're like, gee, I wonder if the first black guy in the galaxy is related to the third black person in the galaxy.
Yep. I got that from the movie. I was like, they're related.
Oh, listen, we all got it from the movie because it was so hammy.
God damn it.
But at first you're just like, is he going to commit a sex crime here? Because Jesus.
Yeah, no, I got that. I wasn't surprised at it at all. But like the stuff in the visual dictionary is fucking ridiculous. Like the stuff that they have in there answers no questions. It doesn't tell you anything. And you could tell that the guy who wrote it was like desperately trying to fill the blanks in. So the question about Starkiller Base and like how it was able to shoot Death Star lasers across the galaxy and how everyone in the galaxy could not only see the Death Star, the Starkiller Base Death Star lasers, but also see the planets exploding
in real time, because we do know that general relativity doesn't exist in this galaxy.
Yep, in real time. No, it does, and they explain it. Is that these Death Star lasers are so powerful and they're designed so well that they actually punch a hole through hyperspace and bend space-time across a quintessential materium in order to make it visible at all points in time in space.
I would believe it more if they said that general relativity doesn't exist in Star Wars. Right. Because general relativity not existing in Star Wars would actually make all of JJ's bullshit flight, chase scenes in fucking Rise of Skywalker make more sense.
Yeah, fucking
Rise of Skywalker. He's able to have a force thing and just be like, oh, they're at Burning Man, and be at Burning Man if general relativity didn't fucking exist.
Mm-hmm. Well, High Republic, everybody. I hope somebody out there is excited, because holy fuck, I am not. It was funny to watch like YouTube reactors react to that announcement, because usually like a Star Wars announcement, you get these reaction channels who are like, oh my God, I'm so excited for fucking everything. And this one, a lot of them were like, well, I guess we'll see. I mean, I don't know what to say. There's really nothing to comment on. And yeah, it just seemed like they were all sort of baffled.
There isn't anything to comment on, and I think this is what's so.
There's roughly 35 minutes worth of things to comment on, according to this podcast.
According to this, no, but like basically, it's a splash announcement that's just like, "Hey, everybody, we're gonna have some new stuff in like 5 months. Go fuck yourself. Like, it's one of those pointless announcement videos. Like, I would have much rather them had something to say before.
Like the last couple of N7-day videos.
Yeah, literally unnecessary. Like, you have nothing to say. Just stop.
Just stop. Okay, so moving on. We're going to go into our D&D talk discussion. We had a couple questions put forward to us by some of the viewers or listeners. I mean, whatever. So we're going to go through those because, hey, you took the time to ask them, and we're going to try to answer some of them. So the first one comes from Chance. And he had a couple here, so I'm going to pick out the one that I think is the most interesting, and it might actually help some people here. He says, what is the right number of players for a campaign? He says, I'm currently in a campaign with 2 players plus the DM, and the party size feels small. However, the campaign before this one, which ended prematurely, had 7 players, and the DM felt it was too unwieldy. So I have a pretty clear answer to this, but Nathan, as a player, I like to do this. I like to throw it to you as a player first. Mm-hmm. As a player, where's that sweet spot for you?
So keep in mind that like most of my experience has been with you. I've only ever played in groups of 4 and group of 5. So I will say that the group of 5 was really kind of pushing it for me as a player because when you're having those role play heavy sessions and we're all just sort of chit-chatting and talking and everyone kind of gets an ability to go into it. But goddamn, when combat rolls up, you're just fucking sitting there for 15 minutes in between. I will cast this spell and I miss. That's me. And then you have 15 minutes more of downtime because when you have 4 other human players, they're all trying to think of things. They're all trying to do things a lot of times. And especially when you got like fucking like rogues in your party because rogue turns just take a long time. Because they're just like, all right, so I'm going to move over here. I'm going to use my bonus action to hide, and then I'm going to jump out, and I'm going to sneak attack, and then I'm going to extra attack because I'm 2-hand fighting, and then there's so much moving parts to their turns that just like it just takes so long. And so I found that like at 5, it was really just like the edge of my attention. So I couldn't imagine being in a larger group than that. With that being said, I think 3 is possible, but I find like my gut feeling when I think of a party of 3 is you are like one person's cataclysmically bad dice away from a TPK. Because when you're playing like 3, there just is no extra wiggle room the way that a party of 4 or even a party like a larger group would have. So I think like that's why I'm just like 3 is passable, but the DM might need to be fudging some dice rolls behind that screen. And then 4 is always comfortable, happy, what we have always aimed for. And then 5, like I said, I've played and it's all right, but combat can get boring.
All right. Yeah, and I would say that you're definitely not far off there. The first thing that I would say to Chance's question is that based on 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, the game is built for 4. So a DM and 4 players. That's sort of the ideal circumstance that the game puts in front of you. All of the challenge ratings for monsters are based off of that, and a lot of the campaigns, the pre-written campaigns, are sort of built for that size. That's how they balance what would essentially be a normal group size. But I have DM'd groups as small as 3 and groups as big as 7. And I can tell you that it is a challenge on either end. So on smaller group sizes, the challenge is always going to be, it's always going to be that sometimes there's just not enough to say between 3 people. And you often find yourself sort of lacking for role play opportunity and character interactions because when there's only a couple people to talk to, you actually say pretty much everything you need to say pretty quickly. And there's not a lot of points of view, and there's not a lot of stuff to sort of push the plot forward. One of the campaigns I'm currently running has 3 players, and the reason why it works is they are all very clever, very funny, and they are very dedicated to sort of role playing this sort of goofy group as if it were sort of like a sitcom comedy type thing. And it works because I play permanent characters in the group to sort of backfill for the gap. So one of the characters is a warlock who has a familiar, and I play that familiar as a integral, repeating part of that group to sort of make sure that anytime I start to see role play start to sort of die off or sort of fall flat, I will sort of inject this familiar character into the conversation, and he'll start talking and sort of maybe point them in the right direction sometimes, or sort of like drive a little bit of conversation there. So he is sort of meant to be a, kickstart to when those things start to fail. That said, you are 100% correct about a couple of bad dice rolls is like you're a couple of bad dice rolls away from a TPK, because they almost TPK'd last game. Where they had actually TPK'd, but we forgot that the last guy standing with one hit point had mirror image up with 2 mirror images left over. And then the boss that they were fighting, which was a Deva, rolled both of his attacks, hit with both attacks, and both of them hit the mirror image. And then he had like one last chance to kill the thing, and he killed it. And so we ended up having to retcon the TPK. And after the game was over, everyone was like, wow, I thought for fucking sure we were done. And you do have to be very careful about what you throw at a 3-person group, because if it doesn't start well, it can really fuck that group over. That, or you have to be really okay with just the whole group dying and the campaign ending, and that sort of just being the end of it. Now, bigger groups, you want to throw something in?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna add that, like, yeah, because like we have had some fights with 4 of us, and even the one where you had at Erebronte as our 5th, where it has been a fucking near thing. It has just been like, it is taxing. Like, every one of us is out of spell slots. We've used all of our abilities. We need a long rest, and it's just like we're clinging to life. And that's why, like, that 3-man group is just like, you're a couple of, like I said, really bad dice rolls away from just like someone drops fast, and now all of a sudden 2 people are not going to carry the day.
Yeah. Now
yeah.
Large groups, you need 2 things to make them work. And if you don't have these 2 things, they do not work. And I believe this thoroughly. You absolutely need to have a DM who is confident in the rules and who can push through combat quickly. I will do this often by sort of prompting players and really sort of saying like, hey, you're on deck, get ready. Hey, this is what's coming up. And sort of making sure that combat is flowing. And if somebody is sort of waffling over what they're going to do, I'm very, very involved in saying like, okay, you got to make a call. You got to make a call. Like, it's time to go. And sort of keeping my eye on the clock and keeping my eye on the combat. So you have to have a DM who is able to constantly keep things moving at a pace that is not going to put the other players to sleep during the rogue's turn, as Nathan would say. The other thing that you need are experienced players who understand the game and aren't going to do that sort of thing. And if you know that one guy's turn always takes 10 years, you probably don't want to put him into a 6-person group, or him or her. But, we watch, all sorts of games where there's 6-7 people at a time. Critical Role regularly plays with 7 people. But Matt Mercer is an incredible DM who can keep things going and keep things moving quite quickly and push through it. But even then, combats take 2 hours. Like, it is not a short thing. Everybody has to be ready to play a long game. They have to be ready to put in 3 to 4 hours worth of gameplay in order to push through a lot of this stuff, because when you have a lot of players, this is always going to be a problem for you. It's always going to be an issue of, when we get into a big fight, that big fight's going to take up the entire game. So if it's not what you want, and if it's not what you're comfortable with, definitely don't do it. Like, just stay away from it. That said, if you are an inexperienced DM, start small. 3 to 4 players is perfectly good. Just don't try to blow them out of the water every game. Don't set up these crazy, death-defying situations that they're going to have to fight their way out of. build your players up, get them to a point where they're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with the game, and then add another player, and then add another player after that. That can be hard sometimes because if you're like me, you're the only DM for a fair distance in terms of like your friends and the people who actually want to play Dungeons and Dragons. And sometimes you get a lot of people going like, "Hey man, can I jump into this campaign?" And I'm like, "Boy, we are already at 5. Like, I don't know if these guys can handle another player."
And the other thing is even when you look at like the practical logistics, the more players you add, the less often you play. Period. Like it's just that is the reality of it. Critical Role is only an exception because they all get paid. Like it is a job for them. That is why they're there every single week. But like, God, man, I'm in 2 campaigns with you and lucky to get a game a month, which I'm not complaining about, but it's just literally this is what adult schedules are.
Okay, so thank you, Chance, for that one. We're going to go on to... I'm going to butcher this name. I apologize. Remias. Remias asked the question. He said he's really curious. What is your stance on house rules? Should the DM decide every aspect of them? Should he change them on the fly if it suits the narrative? I like this question a lot because, Nathan, as a player, what's your view on house rules?
I like how you throw it to me because we are literally house ruling a sumo class for me right now. One of us. I think house rules are a lot of fun. At the end of the day, if you're not looking at playing in a D&D Adventurers League, it is your game. And so to me, the rule of fun trumps all. What is going to be fun for you, your DM, all the players around you, etc. So totally on board with it. Like, shit, we play Unearthed Arcana, like, this is playtest rules, as this is what we're running with and have forever. So, like, we're very flexible and open to pairing the right set of rules to the player to give them the ability to enjoy what they want to do. So that's one element. We're super open to it. With that being said, it very much is a two-way conversation.
Yes.
You cannot, and I'm going to say this from a player, if I was doing something and in that moment in Lang's mind, he's like, holy fuck, I fucked up. Like, that's way too good. That's way too fucking good. You can't nerf me immediately because now I'm going to feel bitter and resentful.
Yes.
Like, I'm planning everything for this session around that. So if we happen to get to that point, and we haven't had a conversation there yet, so, but if we get to that point, then it should be something that you have offline and you both have a conversation about it. Because if there's ever a point where I think, holy fuck, this is a little too powerful, I also want to talk with you, right? Because I, as a player, like, D&D is fun because there is friction. D&D is fun because there is adversity. And sometimes I get to be clever and think my way out of a problem. Sometimes I got to punch my way out of a problem. But the point of playing Dungeons and Dragons for me is not to live out my god power fantasies. If I want that, I'll just go play a fucking video game.
Yeah, Destiny 2 is great for that shit.
Yeah, Destiny 2 is great for that shit. With that being said, the flip side of that, I do want to talk about the flip side. Because you, in our last session, did the flip side of that.
That's right.
If you are playing some house rule shit and you realize that you swung way too hard and this is going to be
negative, you're talking about Terry's character?
You're talking 100% about Terry's character. And you realize this is going to be 100% unfun for the player. You stepped in after one round of combat and you fixed shit. So to give a bit of perspective and background, as part of our old person campaign,
which is a house rule set.
Yeah, it's a house home-baked campaign where I'm playing a fucking house rule class that's based off of Monk, but not. And, you know, you fast forwarded us and you even house ruled kind of what that meant. So we lost hit dice, which means we can't recover as much health when we needed it during short rests. But you also gave all of us a number of drawbacks to represent the injuries that we have suffered and all of these things that may have happened. Terry, unfortunately, rolled up two that work together in just super fucking.
It was fucking great. Yeah. So she lost fingers, and she is constantly under the effects of the Bane spell because she's been cursed by her patron deity. So what we basically said was that her character, when she was firing spells that required a to hit roll, did them at disadvantage. And then disadvantage with the Bane spell. First off, for the 2 rounds that it happened, it was fucking hilarious. Because she could not hit a goddamn thing.
No, she absolutely...
There was no chance she was hitting anything.
It was literally impossible when, like, I think it was like AC was like 16 or something. No, it was AC 17.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were all level 8 characters, so our to hit rolls are kind of around like the +7, +8 realm. But try to roll a 10 when you have disadvantage and must subtract D4 off of that roll. You can't. Like, it is, oh my God, it is so fucking challenging. And so just like she missed and she missed. And she's doing like, you know, trying to do everything. And in that moment, you're like, hey, you know what? If you're within half range of the spell, you don't have disadvantage because you realized that in that moment, she was being punished too hard. And that could have taken her out. So I think like that's the direction where it's just like you as DM.
That's the point. And that's the point that I really want to make is that house rules should never take your players out of the game. It is exactly what Nathan said. Fun trumps all. The point of house rules should be to make the game more fun and more interesting and more involved. You know, when Nathan came up with his idea for a sumo monk, I loved it and he loved it. This was his first time even looking at a monk, like even looking sideways at a monk and being like, you know, maybe monk. And when we built the character and we put everything together, it became clear that the monk rule set would not work for a sumo character. And that so many of the things that make a monk would just wouldn't work. So immediately I started thinking like, okay, how do we want to change this? How do we want to make it more fun? How do I want this to feel unique for Nathan so that Nathan's character is interesting to him, but it also feels potent? Like if you're playing a monk should feel potent. Like you should feel like you are in control of what is going on around you. And that's sort of what makes monks interesting is that they have so many support abilities that you always sort of feel like you're in control as a monk. And that's what I wanted to make fit to a sumo character. So we changed a lot of the abilities, took away Step the Wind, took away Patient Defense, and took away a couple of other things and turned them into abilities that were more similar to a sumo. You know, but this was a two-way street. This was very much like, hey, what about this? And then you said, oh yeah, but like, how does that work here? How does that work here? Would it be cool if we did this? Okay, and then I would rewrite it again and I would send it back to you again. I'd be like, what about this thing? How do you think this would look? Oh, actually, I really like that. I think that would actually good. And we did that back and forth for a while to find the spot where we said, you know what, this is good. And then I think it was a day later where I said, you know what, change it where it says this to this. Because takes time to sort of refine those ideas. And if you're house ruling something on the fly, sometimes as a DM, you just find yourself in that spot where somebody wants to do something bananas and you have to figure out how the fuck would that work. But when it comes to like actually creating house rules that are going to endure throughout your campaign, you know, the focus should be player engagement and fun. And you should not change them on the fly unless you, like Nathan said, man, I hit a little too hard here. And boy, these things really fucking came back in the wrong direction. You know, it's the sort of thing where, you know, if your players are engaged, the house rules will generally always work because the spirit of the house rules will come through in their gameplay. I don't expect Nathan to find the fatal flaw in these house rules and then game the system the whole way through and just be like, I'll just do this in every fight. Because that's not fun.
No, it's not even fun for me as a player. So I can only imagine that would have been infuriating for you as a DM if I was trying to do it. But like, you know, a testament to the process is we did play session 1. We actually had a combat in it.
Yep.
And I fucking loved how that character played because like it was a great time. I could not help but feel like, especially like when I built it up and I did my stat priorities. And then when we did session 0 and I'm gaining all of like, oh, my abilities go up here and I go up there. And I was looking at it and I'm like, I have incredible barbarian stats.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was like con 20. I had like belt of
Yep.
like hill giant strength. So I'm like strength 21. And I'm just like, man, what a good barbarian. What is my like, and then I'd look at like my monk abilities and be like, oh, my spell save DC is like fucking 11 because my dex is not where a
Your
fucking
wisdom,
monk
yeah.
should be.
Your wisdom.
Well,
was
yeah,
lower.
because my wisdom is low and my dex is low, and so that was a concern that kind of prompted it. But at the end of that combat, it felt so incredible and it felt so fun because like my dude was just like this big old like fucking sumo pile of meat. People were wailing away on me. That, you know, I was kind of tanking a bit, like what you kind of expect a sumo to be, but I was also like throwing people to the ground quite well.
Yeah.
And that's what I love, because if you watch sumo, it's literally like winning conditions are literally throwing them out the ring or throwing them on the ground. And so having all of those knockdowns and things made that character feel really fun, and it felt the way I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was worried that it just normal monk wouldn't, because when you're a con strength monk, you're a shitty monk because they're a dex wisdom class.
That's correct.
And so it's just like we were able to like take some monk core mechanics, sprinkle in here. Like we both agreed this is the only subclass that works, so this is what you're taking.
That's
but
right.
like, you know,
it
fist. Worked, and I had a blast.
Well, and another part of this is that we've been gaming for a while, and you've at least learned to trust me. You know, there was a while there, I would say for a good year or so, where like I would house rule something and you would like text me and just be like, really? This is some fucking, like, you're going to give her a hammer where she gets to use her fucking, and like, I'm like, listen, dude, fucking trust me. Okay. I know if I'm going too far. And what's hilarious about it is we played in that other campaign for quite a while, for like a year solid. And, you know, her hammer has almost not had any effect on what the game has been, because as an Eldritch Knight, she's just not using it for those sorts of things, right?
No.
And it's the sort of thing where it's like, oh, okay, I guess I get it now. Like, I guess I sort of understand where this is going. And you do have to have a level of trust between you and your players if you're going to create house rules. Because everybody who is coming into this game, and again, like this old and busted campaign where there are a bunch of old aged players that I'm leveling up and then giving them a bunch of shitty drawbacks, is that I know every single person in this campaign I've played with. They know how I DM, and they know they're all into it for the role play and sort of the uniqueness of this campaign and sort of the ideas behind it. And that's the only reason why house rules work. If you have a bunch of new players coming in and you're trying to like house rules classes with people who you've never played with before, that's going to be tough, because you're going to realize that you and your players have very different expectations for what is fun and what is going to play and what is going to be good. One of the things I told you when we were doing this this house rule for the sumo class was that I was like, dude, your bonus actions and your reactions are going to be a premium. Every turn, you're going to have to be very, very aware of how and when you're using your bonus actions and your reactions, because so much of it is based on that. And I remember we got to like turn 2 or 3 of combat, and you were like, and then I do this, and I'm like, no, you did this, and you're like, oh wait, shit, yeah. I really like, there's some thought and there are meaningful choices built into this class to say, okay, if I do this, I'm not going to be the guy doling out damage, but if I do this, I get to do some pretty fancy shit where I'm throwing people around or knocking them prone and stuff, right? And so it is a, you know, that's what makes characters fun. That's what makes it entertaining to be able to say, okay, you know, this is where I want this character to be, and this is how I want them to play, where if I'm in a different situation, I'm going to do something differently. And like, that's what's going to make this fun. So the whole house rules portion thing, it is muddy waters. I'm not going to say that there's not been some pretty horrific house rules in games that I've played in the past, where, you know, you'll house rule something and then regret it for the whole campaign. I remember bringing up Critical Role again. I think Matt Mercer said more times than I'd ever heard a DM like say, like, I should have never made those boots, because he made like boots of speed for Vax early in the campaign, and then all the way through the end of the campaign, they were just a constant bane, because he made these boots that were just, they were broken. They were completely broken, and he was utterly unwilling to change them or get rid of them. It was just something he always had to sort of work around. And you don't want to find yourself in that situation where you're sort of cursing the choices that you've made and you're unwilling to change them. You know, with what happened with Terry's character, it was hilarious for those first 2 turns, and she played it really well. She played it really fucking funny.
Oh yeah, she role played it well, and then we started telling her, it's just like, you know, and we're like, maybe you should try something else. And so it was kind of that combination of just like her actually starting to try to role play in a different direction than the fucking anger and cussing that she was throwing up, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh right, now we're gonna modify this. So
it was clear that was gonna be every turn until the end of the game, and I was like, this isn't gonna be fun. All right, so they released. Excuse me, I'm gonna mute here for a second. I don't think I muted fast enough there. Because you probably heard me snorking. A little something in the back of my throat. I think I'm choking on a piece of cherry.
I only heard the cough before you said you were going to mute. Then we were good.
We're back. Unearthed Arcana released, since the new year, they've released 3 subclass documents that have just a bunch of wacky cool subclasses that have been... sort of, I get the impression that these are things that sort of never made the cut before, but they were like, listen, let's just refine them and just throw them out there. Who gives a fuck? And there's some pretty interesting stuff in there. I think there's 2 or 3 standouts for me. A lot of them are kind of mediocre, but I think there are 2 or 3 that I look at and I go, you know, I kind of like that idea. It's kind of a cool idea.
I especially think that there is more of a focus on Unearthed Arcana now, because it feels like D&D is releasing more supplements in a given year. And instead of just being the campaign supplements that Wizards of the Coast would normally do, where they're just like, it's Tyranny of the Dragons, part 1 and 2, you guys. We're getting those, but then we're also getting things like Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which is basically just like, hey, I hear you like boats. Boats and islands, let's do it. Boats and hoes, the fucking supplement. Like, let's go. You know, and then you get like Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and Xanathar's Guide to Everything. And like, you know, so it really does feel as if they're trying to like fill the pipeline for future releases, because we finally got an Artificer, for Pete's sake.
Yeah. And to sort of touch very lightly on the Artificer, I don't want to do like a review of the class. I think that they found an interesting spot for Artificer to land. I personally liked the original Unearthed Arcana for Artificer a little bit more, and sort of didn't like that they sort of took away your mechanical servant. But they did add the Battlesmith subclass, which gives you sort of that mechanical servant back in a very specific form. And I think all things considered, you know, I think it's a good class. I really do like it. I rebuilt Laruska in the new Alchemist setup, and you know what? It's fun. I think it's super fun. I don't get Mud Boy anymore, which is sort of sad. But
I mean, so, like for me, I think my only complaint with Artificer as a class is in Unearthed Arcana, it felt like Alchemist was kind of bunk, and they didn't quite get it right, and then they released it, and Alchemist still feels kind of bunk. And that's a little unfortunate. Is I feel like they really nailed the like mechanical tinkerer aspect of Artificer, but they didn't get the fucking potions master aspect of it right.
Well, there's a few things to the potion master aspect that I think a lot of people, when they first read the book, didn't really get. And it is the idea that after a long rest, you get a random potion, which is like that list of 6 potions.
Again, which is cool.
They're okay. I think at low levels, they're pretty cool. And at high levels, they're kind of meh. But what it also says is that at any time, you can just spend an action to turn a spell slot into a potion off that list. And you get to pick. Right? So after a long rest, you can actually use all of your spell slots to stock up on potions and just have them. And that, I think, is pretty cool. And I think that there are some cool aspects. But I think the thing with Alchemist is it's all flavor. Like, you have to want to roleplay an Alchemist. It's not good. Don't get me wrong. I think there are parts of it that are good, but it is definitely not a, like, good class. I think that there are much better classes out there.
it is a hybrid class, right?
Yes. Well, they're half casters, which means their spell slots only.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is like that's what I meant by hybrid. Is they are a half caster, but unlike a ranger, which very much has that like rogue with magic kind of feel to it, or even the paladin, which is fighter with magic feel to it. The artificer's abilities really do lend themselves better to roleplay. In a lot of ways. And so it's almost, like there really is no sort of like one-to-one for their half casteriness where you can't say like, oh, this is like a barbarian with spells.
Yeah,
like
they're
really
a shittier
is like
wizard.
They really kind of are.
That's basically what it comes down to, is they're a shittier wizard.
But the role play elements of that character are super cool, and that's what I appreciate about it. So
I really do like the class. I think the class is super cool, and I think that if you are playing the Battlesmith, there is still potential for big damage and a lot of really, really cool things. I think the Alchemist is almost purely a support class, which is sort of unfortunate, but you can still do some fun stuff with it. I think that it is the most flavorful of the Artificer classes. That said, one of the new Unearthed Arcana that they released is fucking Iron Man, which I absolutely went gaga over. I was like, this is the fucking coolest class that I will never play. And I am the biggest Iron Man fan you will find.
No. I know that. And like, listen, the moment you said they made Iron Man, I was like, fuck, no wonder you like it. Because you're like, I really love the Artificer. Whereas because this has Druid and Ranger, I legit didn't read the Artificer. Because I'm like, I don't even give a shit. Give me that Druid.
We'll talk about the Druid in a little bit. But yeah, like, I think for the most part, like, the Armorer subclass is super, super cool. It's very flavorful. It's probably the most potent of the Artificer classes that they've released so far. I feel like it's sort of a missed opportunity to not have it as one of the, like, subclasses right out of the gates, but I understand why they didn't, because it's very, very clearly Iron Man. Like, it's very, very clearly Iron, where they're like, you can shoot lightning out of gems on your palms or a large gem on your chest, and you're like, yeah, I see where this is going. But there are some super fun
to making armor a conduit for your Artificer magic.
There you go. I think that it's super fun. I love the idea of playing what is essentially a pseudo fighter, where you're using your intelligence stat for everything. Like, where it's like, but when you hit, instead of strength, you use intelligence. And when you shoot, instead of, this, you use intelligence. And it's like, you know what? That fits. I like that. That's very, very Iron Man, Tony Stark sort of a thing. I think that it's very, very cool. And I think a lot of people are going to be playing it just because it is super fun. And I think it's pretty damn potent based on like what they have in there.
I mean, listen, at third level, they just know Magic Missile. Magic Missile is always a fantastic utility spell that every wizard should know, because it's just like, just straight up do damage.
Well, and you get to add your intelligence modifier to like the damage on spells that you cast when you're doing that stuff. So it's like you get that extra bonus. All I could picture was like, like a box of crystals like popping up out of the shoulder holster, like fucking War Machine, and like firing magic missiles. Like, that's all I could picture.
Absolutely, that's amazing.
Or if you play a Goliath, you could be a Gundam.
No,
yeah, go for it. All right, let's talk about the Druid. I laughed so hard when I saw this, because I was like, oh my god, it's Frular.
It totally is, because it's just like, it's a Druid circle of the stars. I'm like, you made my Druid a celestial from the stars. This is perfect. Okay, I just want to preface this by saying, I'm not sure. I don't know if this has been covered yet since we've come back on the podcast, but I have a Druid problem.
He has a serious Druid problem, yes.
I love Druids. I love them to death until I have to play them. And when I play them, I am always bored to tears, because they are never the class that I want, ever. Like, there is a 100% chance that before a campaign, there even been campaigns, in fact, before the last one, I even told you when I was going to do the Necromancer, I'm like, listen, I know I'm doing a Necromancer, but I need you to not let me change my mind to Druid.
That's right.
I just straight up said it.
Yeah.
And then like 2 weeks later, I'm just like, hey, so I had this Druid idea,
Well, they released that. They released
me.
that Unearthed Arcana for like the fungal druid, and you're like, "Oh my god,
that is
look
my
at
favorite.
this shit!" And I was like, "No, we said we were very clear.
I know.
We were very clear. We're not allowing this."
So I immediately was just like, "Ooh, new druid!" And I started reading it, and super cool. Okay, first of all, I love druid classes that use wild form for something other than shapeshifting. Okay, I've played a moon druid twice. I've played a land druid. Like, I've just, like, shapeshifting is cool and all, but I feel like as a mechanic, because it has a finite number of charges in between rests, I love the idea of using wild form for something else. So, this kind of hits that, because instead of shapeshifting, you can choose to essentially, they call it starry form. Which is super cool because it gives you utility. And so when it comes to the druid is effectively the Swiss Army knife character class.
Yes.
It does nothing well. Or sorry, it does nothing exceptionally, but it does everything well. Is really what a druid is. There's always a tool in your box for every single situation. And I feel like the Circle of the Stars druid is like that on steroids. And so it's just like, when you have your wild form, you can starry form, and now you're able to, splash healing. So you're a better healer in this situation because you want Chalice. Archer, you're just going to bonus attack, do extra damage. Dragon, you've got better saves. Like, so it's just all about adding that utility. And that's really what it came down to. I think the idea of a druid whose tie is not to the land, but to the cosmos and the stars, I think that's a really interesting take on the class. And so, yes, I did read this, and I was like, it's not my Circle of the Spore druid, which I still... Listen, if one of my characters dies in one of our two campaigns laying...
Yeah, listen.
I'm going to make a mushroom druid.
That's fine. I don't have any problem with that, okay? And I'm all for it. I was going to say, did you read the marriage cleric?
I didn't.
Okay, so there's a cleric class in there. I can't remember exactly what it's called. I don't have it in front of me.
But Unity domain.
Yeah, the Unity domain, which is essentially the marriage cleric. And like the love cleric, it's fucking hilarious because one of the gods they specifically reference is Eldath.
Oh shit, you're right, they do.
So Nathan also plays a cleric who worships Eldath in one of the campaigns, and I was like, I mean, this is an interesting one right here. I just got a kick. I was like, wow, they're just making characters for you and me. Like, this is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, like, legitimately, my pacifist cleric is a follower of Eldath, and I bore the shit out of my entire party, constantly praying to Eldath.
Yes.
It's great.
It's fucking fantastic. So the other one that I really liked in this was actually the Clockwork Sorcerer.
Okay.
It is See, I'm not a fan of sorcerers. I don't think sorcerers are particularly interesting. There's like one build that I like, and that's the only one that I like. And I think that generally sorcerers are just sort of boring wizards or boring warlocks. Like, that's basically the way that I look at them.
I love the sorcery point mechanic, and I love the idea of being just naturally gifted in magic, but I feel like the sorcerer class has had shitty subclasses forever.
Yeah, and
wild magic is garbage.
Yes.
Dragonborn is garbage, and they're just super fucking boring and uninteresting.
Well, they added Shadow, which is the best. Like, it's actually the best one. And that
was the one they added in Xanathars,
yes.
right?
And Shadow is actually really good. And that's the one that I like the most. But this was actually the first one that they came out with that I thought, oh, that would actually be really fun to play. Essentially what the Clockwork Druid is that you sort of use your sorcery points and your abilities to like manipulate balance, right? So like you can use your sorcery points to like remove advantage or like remove disadvantage or like take away crits and like
that's really cool.
Yeah, like it's sort of this idea of like your power comes from like the Modrons. I don't know if you know anything about them.
I don't.
They're like the weird clockwork, weird looking like creatures. They look like boxes with legs and eyes and like clockwork parts. It's very strange. but like they come from this other dimension that is essentially built around like magic equals balance sort of a thing. And a lot of your magic is focused on like, you know, it's not necessarily good, it's not necessarily destructive, but like you just always want balance. And so you're always forcing balance into situations. And I just thought, boy, that would actually be a really cool sorcerer to play, just for the fact that like the roleplay opportunities are really rad. Like building a character that's sort of constantly changing probabilities and like constantly changing the way the world works to sort of have things work in your favor toward balance or work, you know, against your enemy toward balance. And like that just sounds really, really fun. And the idea of like your power coming from like the Madrons and like this other dimensional plane of like balance is actually really fucking cool. It's almost like I picture it like there's a video game called Quantum Break, I think is what it was called, where like you sort of like control time and you're constantly like rewinding time and like making it work in your favor. And that's sort of what I picture this sorcerer being. And I just think that it's a very cool idea. I will never play it. It's so far down my list, but like it's one of the coolest things that they've come up with for sorcerers in a really long time.
No, and like legitimately, like I want to like sorcerers more than I do, but all of their subclasses always seem uninspired. And even when you look at the number of abilities that a class gets, you can always tell which ones the devs like. And it is quite clear that two of the designers fucking love monks.
Yes, they do.
Because monks get like 5 abilities every level. It's stupid. And then you look at sorcerers, and when you like open up like the player's handbook and you look at sorcerers, there's like 6 things they get through all 20 levels. And you're just like, y'all ran out of ideas. And you can't even tell me, like, I've heard some people, they're like, oh, well, you know, gaining new spell slot levels is like an ability, and that's fair. I'm like, then open up the wizard and lie to my face some more, or the bard. Like, come on, man. Like, don't lie to me. But no, you're right. I do like the idea of a character class that seeks balance. So removing disadvantage, removing advantage, even. You know, it's an interesting take.
Yes.
Because, honestly, that's probably the best character for me. Oh, you mean I can treat dice rolls lower than 9 as a 10?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Weakness.
Like I said, they made these for you and I, basically.
It is hilarious.
And there's some other interesting ones in there that are sort of mediocre in my mind. Like the Werewolf Barbarian, the like lycanthropy, alter self barbarian is sort of lame. Really didn't do anything for me. I feel like there's way better, more interesting classes to play out there than especially for barbarian.
You know, the one that I did like, out of all the ones, even though there was a druid in this exact same one, honestly, the Fae Ranger I thought was really fucking interesting.
Yeah, and I found that interesting too, because I didn't think that at all.
Like, you didn't think of Fae, or you didn't think it was interesting?
I didn't think it was interesting.
See, I love the idea of Fae gods, and maybe it is because in Western mythology, and I'm stepping out of D&D, but just like in like Western traditions, the idea of trickster gods doesn't exist in the same way it does. So when you're a student of classics and mythologies, and you learn, you know, about Loki, you learn about Pan, you learn about all of these things, the idea of trickster gods I find very interesting, because they're not malevolent, but they're not always good. They're kind of this in-between thing. And so any opportunity to introduce like Fae to D&D has always been like super interesting to me. So the Fae Bard in Xanathars, I think, is the best Bard subclass there is, because I think it's this interesting trickster god where I know when Terry was playing it, when Terry was playing it, she even tried to do, the one thing where it's just like, oh, I'm going to play a song and I'm going to try to influence this person. You're like, you're influencing the party? Why the fuck would you do that? And you're just like, if it fails, they have no idea. But if it passes, they have to speak well of us.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Like, you know, and so it's just like this interesting trickster element. And I love that. And I think Fae Warlocks, for the same reason, are the most interesting. Like the Fae Warlock that I started in that campaign with you, where you were a player, I actually didn't have any offensive spells. Like all of my known spells was like Charm Person.
Eldritch Blast.
every warlock takes Eldritch Blast because otherwise you're useless. Like, let's be real. But like, Eldritch Blast was the only thing that I had that was like an offensive damage dealing spell, because I had like Charm Person, I had Friends, I had all of these things, because the idea of manipulating personal relationships for roleplay purposes, super interesting to me. So when I saw a ranger that's also like the Fae Wanderer that guards the border between the material plane and the Feywild, I thought it was super interesting. And maybe it's because the non-unearthed arcana ranger subclasses suck. Like just the straight up player's handbook ranger blows.
Yep.
But I really enjoyed this. You know, their Fae magic. They got Charm Person, Misty Step, Dispel Magic. Like, really good kind of like trickster god kind of Fae things. Mm-hmm. And so, just like I said, I liked that one. And out of the three from Iron Man, A New Druid, and the Fae Ranger, like the Fae Ranger was probably the one that stuck with me the most, where I was just like, fuck yeah, I will. Like, this is really interesting and cool. Much better than the Planar Ranger they had a while back.
I love the Planar Ranger. You're fucking crazy. That is the best Ranger.
I use portals. Ooh.
You get to teleport between bow shots. Like that in and of... Now, here's the thing. I will fully admit that Ranger's lame up until like level 12 when you get the ability to teleport between bow shots, because it's basically just a worse version of a lot of like the basic Ranger stuff. You still get to stack your spells and your Hunter's Mark and stuff like that. I think Ranger, a lot of what Ranger suffers from in general is that if you don't do the like Animal Companion Ranger, which doesn't work in the standard rules, which is why like the new Ranger that they put out was sort of a much better version of that. If you play like Ranger the way that it's set up, it's just always a little bit behind everyone else. And it has a ton of utility, and there's a lot of great things that it can do that other classes can't do. And so it's sort of invaluable in that way, but you always feel like you're just not there in a lot of situations. Mm-hmm. But it's such a cool class. And part of the reason why I like the Planar Ranger is because it is unique enough that you have like a different way of looking. You're not just like the Druid where you're just like protect the forests, but you actually have sort of a different view on the world, and you get to play a different type of character. But Ranger sort of falls into the same trap that Warlock does. It's an incredibly flavorful class with so much roleplay potential and so much cool shit that other classes just can't do. But in every single fight, you just cast Hex and Eldritch Blast. Like, it's, you have a bread and butter combination, and that's all you do. And doing anything else is always a letdown, and that's always why these classes feel sort of meh. So for me, I do like the sort of aspects of the Feywild protecting Ranger, but I think that there are better Ranger builds that sort of have better, more interesting things later in their classes. That said,
like, listen, when Fular subclass, obviously this didn't exist, but going into Monster Hunter as a multi-class was huge, and it was really good.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, those sorts of things are why Ranger sort of stands out. Is it is a very unique class, and it fits a certain mold. I think when they redid the class, they did a great job with it. I don't understand why they didn't release that re-released version.
Yeah, like, that's the big thing for me. Is I feel like they missed the mark when it came to the player's handbook. And then they did that Unearthed Arcana where they're just like, hey, we're trying to do a better pass on this. And that version of the rules worked brilliantly. It was fantastic. Mm-hmm. Like, I even have it as a fucking bookmark for Pete's sake, because like I'd never want to lose it.
No, I printed it out and put it in a binder.
Nice.
Yeah, like I played with one of them in a game that I played, and it was great. Like, it worked really, really well. It feels
really good because, like I said, they did miss the mark. I think the reason we haven't seen them publish it is because they don't want to lose the beginner friendliness that D&D has right now. Right? So they don't want someone to buy a player's handbook, be like, I want to play a Ranger, and then show up to a fucking Adventurers League game and be told their Ranger build doesn't work because there's this other book that they have to buy that has Ranger. I think that is 100% the reason we have never seen it be released yet. And like I said, it's just a goddamn shame, because I do believe that my favorite class is Ranger, period, full stop. I fucking love everything about the way it plays. No, but like, listen, the reason I always hate druids is because they're not Rangers. Like, my very first druid that I picked, in my brain, I was playing a druid from Diablo 2. But that's what a Ranger is.
Yes.
Like, let's be real, right? Like, that's how a Ranger actually plays. So I hated and resented the fact that I was literally just a tree wizard.
Yes. Well, you were a bear wizard is like basically what it came down to. Yeah, I think that releasing the subclasses is super fun, because I think the more subclasses that you release, the more interesting stuff that sort of comes up. It really, there's a lot of potential for a lot of fun here. And for Wizards to sort of handle it the way that they handle it with Unearthed Arcana, where they're just like, listen, playtest material, fucking go for it. Just get in there. And, this sort of goes toward the house rule conversation that we were having. Like, these are all basically just house rules.
Yeah.
And
like, none of these are Adventurers League compatible, because Adventurers League, their official organized play format, requires it to be in a published printed book. But all of these are super cool that help you find the character that you want, because I know that Terry fell in love with Grilka playing an Unearthed Arcana one, and then luckily for her, they released that version. Like, they actually published it in Xanathars midway through our campaign. So yeah, she shifted to the Xanathar refined version because it was a little less broken.
Just a tad.
They took the playtest feedback and they balanced it, so that helped her out.
Well, yeah, I think that all of that stuff is really important. And again, I just want to circle back around to sort of the grander conversation. And this feeds into a lot of the stuff that we've talked about with Dungeons and Dragons as a whole. Players not reading their rules, or people taking too long of a time, or sort of people having certain attitudes towards the game, or how many players do you get into the game. Like, these are all things you have to juggle as a DM. And when I put out the call for like, hey, I want to start a new campaign, here's the players I'm going to reach out to. And I say, this is how I want to make this work. This is how I want this to look. This is how, I want everything to happen, whether I'm being incredibly restrictive with the player choice or I'm being really open with the player choice. Anytime somebody comes to me and they say, listen, I've got this idea, I'm always open to it. And even if it is like, what if I played this wacky character from Unearthed Arcana? Or what if I did this? What if we just tweaked this a little bit to make it more flavorful for the character? I'm always open to that, because, again, you said it best, like, fun is king. That's the goal. The goal is to have fun. You do have to take into account, is it going to be fun for all the other players in your campaign? Yes or no? Who knows? But a lot of that you have to sort of feel out. You have to have some trust with your players. If you are playing in a campaign with people that you don't know, opening that door all the way can be sort of a death sentence sometimes, because you don't know how players are going to react. You don't know how they're going to play their characters, and you don't know how they're going to handle you as a DM, and you don't know how they're going to take your house rules. Are they going to say, nope, this is the rule, we can't change it, it's great, and it's this broken system you're stuck with for the rest of your life? Or is it going to be a really flexible group that's going to, sort of bend and move with the way that the story goes, and sort of agree that, sometimes shit needs to change. Maybe we do need to sort of tweak things a little bit. And like, if you guys are having fun, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm sure that there are people out there who look at this conversation and go, you guys are all fucking insane. Just play the rules. The rules are there for a reason. And that's how they look at Dungeons and Dragons. But that's never been my experience.
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, there are certainly games where that is the case. Like, you used to play miniatures. I still do. You can't go house ruling that shit, because at the end of the day, a miniature war game is designed to be a confrontation between players that inevitably has a winner and a loser. And I think that's why you need to make sure you're playing rules as written, as close as possible to what the designers have intended. But when it comes to D&D, this is literally a game of imagination, where the goal is for everybody to have fun and enjoy themselves. So why not fudge shit? Like, listen, we all roll on roll 20. You don't.
I do not.
So if you were all about like, and that's how I know that there are times you fudge dice. And even if you don't fudge dice, oh, I know. No, but like, it's always an opportunity for you, and it is a possibility for you. So if you fudge it, fuck, I don't care, because you don't fudge dice to try to party wipe us. No. And you don't fudge dice to try to make every combat nice and easy. So I have no doubt that when we were playing our fucking Tyranny of Dragons, like 4 super DPS characters, no tanks, no healers, all damage all the time, you were probably fudging dice more often than not just to try to add tension to the combats.
Actually,
and I'm
generally
okay
not
with it.
Yeah, like I have fudged dice before, and I think that all DMs do it. And I think that it is sort of an important part of being a dungeon master, is to sort of know when it's time to sort of say, you know what, something needs to happen here.
Listen, you admitted in our first ever session of D&D that you had to fudge the dice crazy.
You guys would have party wiped against 4 goblins. I had
we would have. No, I know, but that's exactly the point. It's like, that's what you told us, is like, because all 4 of us, our dice were horse shit. We couldn't hit a naked goblin to save our fucking lives.
Yep.
And like the very first arrow like critted me.
Yep.
Like, oh my God,
you went down to like 2 hit points. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
No, but that's the thing, is like, I understand that is an aspect of DMing, because if every single dice roll was going to be straight, you'd do it in roll 20 with the rest of us.
Yep.
But I understand that sometimes you do need to have the option to tweak things, and I don't give a shit, because it's fun. And that, like I said, that's the fundamental difference between something like a miniature war game where rules as written matter, and something like D&D where the point is for this group of people to get together and have an enjoyable time. And some people may have that enjoyable time by playing it as fucking strict and tight to the rules as possible. I'm not going to tell you that's wrong. It's fucking Dungeons and Dragons, man. Like, do what makes you and everyone you're playing with happy, because that's the best fucking way to play.
Yeah. And again, like, the reason why I also don't roll dice where everyone can see them is because you shouldn't see what I see. And that's always sort of the immersion piece, is that sometimes you do have to fudge dice for the sake of immersion, and you have to do it in order to progress a story or to sort of bring things in a certain direction. That said, I avoid it at all costs. And when I say that, I mean that, like, I only will, in the most dire circumstances, consider fudging the dice in some way. Generally, when I am designing an encounter, I would say 3 to 4 outcomes in mind. It goes like this, it goes like this, it goes like this, or it goes like this, right? For instance, the encounter in that first game with the Old and Busted campaign, you guys did things that changed what I had planned for the encounter. So it sort of took things in a different direction. And I had to sort of move with things and sort of take things with a sort of very open and loose look, because even in that case, all of the things that I had pictured going a certain way did not happen, because a few things happened in terms of the campaign. Terry kicked everybody out of the bar. And there was like 2 or 3 other things where I was just like, well, shit, I guess what I had planned needs to happen a little differently.
Yeah, you even mentioned it, because like Terry kicked everyone out of the bar, and then Maddie went and picked up like the replica of his sword and was like swishing it around like, what a cheap piece of shit this is.
Yep.
And that's when the fight started, and you even said, you're just like, man, you're lucky you're holding that. I thought your first 3 turns were going to be like fetching a weapon.
Yep. Well, there was a whole different thing that was going to happen, because they were basically going to with the bar full, they were going to try to draw him away from the table and then kidnap him. Like, that was their goal, right? But like, it didn't go that way, because of the situation changed, and that was the way that it went. So like, I rolled for their stealth, and I had you guys roll, but like, there were a couple things I had to fudge in order to sort of make, have the scene progress in a way that actually like didn't leave you guys sort of wondering like, what the fuck is going on? Nothing's happening. And like, it does happen. And I do every once in a while find myself in a situation where I'm fudging a roll. But it's always for the sake of immersion and sort of player enjoyment and things like that. But I don't do it often as a rule. I try to avoid it at all costs as a rule. I really, really, it's like breaking the prime directive. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you have to, but it's still there for a reason. You should not do it. You really shouldn't. But sometimes you kind of got to break the prime directive.
And that's the thing is, like I said, I have never had a situation where I have felt like you have been. And that's why I say, like, when I say, like, I know, it's more of like I trust that you have been, because, like, whether it's in our favor or against us, you're always trying to make sure shit is fair. And if I had to guess, the last fight where you may have been fudging dice rolls for us wouldn't even have been old and busted. I don't think it ever came up where you had to.
Nope.
It would have been when Erebronk got cut in half. That fight, because we were all so fucking tapped and we were all so fucking exhausted, and Maddie couldn't hit anything. So, like, Maddie was basically dead. We basically had 2 dead characters because Maddie had 0 spell slots and never hit anything ever. And you had the 6 portals and the Seeker and all of that going on. And I'm just like, that smacked of one wrong move by us was a TPK. I think if there was ever a fight that you were just kind of fudging stuff to make sure that we stayed up, or like, that fight was hard. But you didn't want to end your I've been writing this campaign for 2 years on session 3. Like that was the fight where I'm just like, I think like that was maybe one where you had to fudge shit, because holy shit, that was probably the hardest D&D fight I've ever played. Ever.
No, I did not fudge any dice in that fight.
Interesting.
I would say 3 or 4 turns into that fight, I came to grips with the idea that 1 or 2 of you would be dead. And that likely some of you would survive, but I was absolutely certain Erebronk was not coming back. And so, no, I just said, listen, what happens, happens. And you know what the surprise in that fight was. Yes. And so I sort of knew that if it went to... There was like 3 or 4 termination points that I had planned. And we ended up hitting the one that was like the most cinematic, which was hilarious because I did not fudge that roll either. It just happened. But I was convinced. I was just like, listen, there's a good chance Maddie's character is dead. There's a good chance the NPC that's joined your party is dead. And there's a good chance that maybe one other person is going to die in this fight. And that there's going to have to be some after the fact fudging to maybe bring some characters back to life, or like suddenly the city guard run in or something to just help this situation. But no, like I appreciate character death. Like I appreciate that. So like I generally don't fudge things to stop character death. And if it, when it comes to party wipes, that is where you as a DM need to decide, is this the sort of campaign where a party wipe is a legitimate option? Or are you more focused on telling a heroic epic story that sort of ends a certain way? And usually I don't decide that until I'm a good way through the campaign, until I'm at a point where I've realized that, like, boy, it would really disappoint the players if they didn't actually get to see the end of this campaign. Or, boy, it would really feel cheap if nobody came out of this thing unscathed. And, like even in Rise of Tiamat at the end there, like I didn't fudge any of those dice. I was literally trying to kill all of you. And
you know what? If we had TPK'd to Tiamat, that's still satisfying.
Oh,
like,
no, and
as a player,
I felt that way too. I was like, listen, if they die at the end, they die at the end and the world ends, but at least the campaign comes to an end. Like the final fight, all bets are off, trust me. But like, for a lot of situations, like in that campaign so far, I haven't fudged the dice very often. The one time that I genuinely fudged the dice was the first time you interacted with the Seeker. And the Seeker showed up in the cave and like knocked Maddie's character unconscious twice. And then you all just turned around and beat the shit out of the Seeker to the point where I was like, holy shit, this character's going to die like right now. And their ability to get away was a combination of spells and rolls and stuff like that. And I basically fudged one of the rolls to make sure that they were able to stealth away.
Mm.
But that was for the cinematic shit that would come afterwards, right?
Yeah, because like I appreciate.
I think you all turned around and it was like 3 crits in a row, and I was like, Jesus fucking Christ!
Oh yeah, like that was the thing, is like the Seeker came out of nowhere and just fucking ended Maddie, and then I rolled one of my very, very few critical success. So when I roll nat 20s in D&D, you need to understand that it is meaningless. Like the roll that I am making is not one that could kill someone. It is not one that could determine like the outcome of like where to go next.
Yeah,
it's usually things like
the stairs are slippery. Make a roll. Nat 20.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. You need to hold your breath underwater. Nat 20.
Yeah, exactly. Like it is always going to be the most meaningless of roll. So like the Seeker comes, drops Maddie, and knocks him unconscious. So I'm like, I would like to pull him to safety, and then I'm going to bonus action like healing word or like something to get him up. And you're like, oh, you're going to try to pull him? Give me a roll. Nat 20.
Yep.
So just like, whoop, look, he's over here.
Just yanked
so,
him
like,
back. Yep, it was funny.
Fucking nat 20 him. I brought him up. The Seeker comes over, fucking stabs him again. I'm like, God damn it. I just fixed this. But then, yeah, we did turn around and we're like, we got to kill this bitch. It was like, nat 20, nat 20, nat 20. You're just like, oh, shit. So, like, I get that. And I don't even care. Like, again, in hindsight, I don't even mind because that cinematic reveal that you did have had such an emotional impact. And that's why, as a player, I don't care. Because you, as a DM, and I think this applies to every DM, if you are not coming at it from a position of bad faith, if you're not saying no to me as a player, and you're rolling with the punches and you're doing whatever just to keep that story flow, I don't care. And that's really what it comes down to. What bugs me as a player and what has had me drop out of other campaigns is when I am told, no, I can't do this. When I am told that, or like midway through something, I'm trying to do something and I'm planning. And then like, as we go back to like the house rules where it's just like, no, you can't do that. That's unfair. And I mean, like, listen, every now and then I do try to think up some Patrick Rothfuss bullshit because it's funny to me. I don't ever want it. Like, and I think you and I have that understanding is like when I was trying to convince you that lungs count as an open container that I could create water in. Yep. You were just like, all right, listen, I understand the merits of your argument. I agree with them. Would your pacifist cleric literally kill a man like this? I was like, no. Like, I don't even want to do it. I just want to argue it for the sake of it.
Like, I think that there is a lot of good habits to learn as a DM based around the idea of being willing to let go of what you have in mind if a player comes up with something cool. I think if there are situations where you will have a player say like, oh my God, I've got this great idea. I want to do this and I want to do this and I want this to happen. And sort of having that get thrown in the face of like, but I had this planned. I had, somebody was going to kick the door open and this was going to happen. I had the perfect scenario in mind and boy, you players sure fucked it up. You have to be willing to sort of let go of what you have planned if a player really comes up with something cool. And if a player really thinks like, oh shit, that's what this is about. There are times when that actually builds into like a whole story hook, or it builds into like a really core part of a person's character because you let them have that moment. Like you let them have the moment that essentially turned the fight on its head or turned the situation on its head. And it's sort of like that hallmark moment for that character and for that player to the point where like it influences everything they do from that point forward. And if you don't give your players the opportunity to do that, if you don't give them the opportunity to fuck with the rules and fuck with you as a DM, you are going to find your games end up being really stagnant. And characters feel like their characters are really stagnant because they feel like they're stuck in a box and that they can't do anything wild or interesting or creative.
Well, one of my earliest kind of like moments like that, and it has stuck with me. Like, I need you to know that like that original like starter set scenario, I remember almost nothing of. But I remember the hilarious things. I still want to get a tattoo of my bear falling through some paper walls with a surprised wizard
with doves flying out. Yes, the doves flying.
Yeah. Like that would be incredible. I'd love a tattoo of that. But like going to what you're saying, where it's just like, don't say no to your characters. One of the things that has stuck with me from that campaign was when we were looking for a druid and we get into like this abandoned town and you tell us about like the
Thunder Tree.
The baby dragonling in the tower with members of the Cult of the Dragon that are in there. And like, there's all of this other shit around here. And I was like, wait a second, we're looking for a druid, right? And I was like, I am going to leave a message in Druidic. I'm going to just fucking write it. I'm going to carve it into this sign here onto the wall so you can't miss it, saying like, hey, we're outside this gate. And we'll just wait for the druid to come to us.
Yep.
And then we wandered off. We fucking made camp. And you worked that in, even though the fucking starter set at no point said, hey, a druid can do this.
Yep.
But you worked it in and you let me feel clever in that moment. And it was one of the...
Well, you guys skipped that entire city full of shit that could kill you, full of stuff that was way too high level for you, and full of situations that was like, you know, might have been like 2 whole sessions worth of like, you know, making your way through the like, you know, dead city of Thunder Tree.
And I mean...
Yeah, like it and this was what pointed you toward the castle. Because you guys missed every single opportunity to get the location of Cragmaw Castle. And so, yeah, like it pointed you in the right direction. And it was just like, hey, everyone kind of looked at your character and was like, all right, good job. You have to give people the opportunity to do that stuff. And even like you were talking about, your bear form crashing through a hidden door into the study as doves are flying through. That's fucking stupid. And there's no rules that allow for that sort of thing. And you got a surprise attack on the wizard because the question was like, is he surprised? Yep. And you killed him in like the first round of combat because he had 26 hit points and you crit. And it was just like, all right.
It was a bear because Circle of the Moon gets like Circle of the Moon is weird because levels 2 through 5, you're way too powerful because the whole point of Circle of the Moon is like, oh, all of these limits on wild form, throw them in the garbage. Mm-hmm. So I was effectively, I think we were like level 2 or 3 at the time, and I'm effectively like a level 7 bear. So we get a surprise round, and I fucking maul the guy to death. And again, like that moment is kind of like etched in my memory because like that was the moment where like I realized that like D&D is this incredible, beautiful, fun thing. Mm-hmm. You know, because like growing up, I never really had a lot of friends that role played, and the friends that I did have that role played were usually the weird ones.
the masquerade ones. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
They can go back to past episodes and find the episodes where we talked about it, where you're just like, hell no, they are at the bottom of the nerd pyramid. These are the worst of the worst. And I was like, listen, man, I think if you tried it, you'd enjoy it. And it was like 2-3 years later where you're just like, hey, what about Dungeons and Dragons? And I'm just rubbing my hands together like, right? Well, look who's come around.
I remember there were a couple of times, like once in my teenager, you know, when I was a teenager, once in my early 20s, where it's just like I was sitting around at a table and then like they'd just be like, what does your character do? And I remember vividly sitting there thinking, this is stupid. Like, I'm just like, what do you mean, what would my character do? Well, this is dumb, but like, you know, I don't know what, like something happened. And so that's why I'm like, I want to try it. D&D 5th sounds good. But like I said, it was that stupid moment when my brown bear, because I didn't have any more wild form slots. So even though the combat was over, I didn't want to stop being a bear.
Yes.
So I squeezed myself into this fucking like circular staircase as this giant grizzly bear. And I get to the bottom and you were like, and because I was leading, no one else could get around me or above me because I was literally just wedging my way through.
Well, and I made you make a dexterity saving throw because of like the stairs.
Yeah, and like at the top of the stairs, I got it, and fine, I was walking. But then I got to the end, and like there's nothing there; it's a wall. And so you're like, give me a perception check, and I rolled like a 2. Just abysmally bad. You're like, it's a wall. You're a bear. What do you want to do? Like, you can't. It
turn around. You couldn't turn around.
It smells like a wall. And I was like, can I turn around? And you're like, no. And I still didn't want to drop fucking wild form because I had no more charges. I'm like, all right, I would like to start walking backwards up the stairs as a bear. And you were like, give me a dex save. And I rolled a 1.
Yep.
You're like, give me a dexterity check. And I rolled a 1. So you're like, all right, you start to go backwards, but you trip because you can't see what you're doing. There are people behind you. You trip and you somersault over, like, ass over tea kettle. And you end up going through what is a fake wall into the bedroom of the guy, because with that map, we found his like emergency bolt hole exit, because instead of going like the big old like entrance here sign, like with the fucking arrows, we're all like, what's over by the barrels? Oh, it's a staircase. Like, we fucked it up start to finish.
Yeah, it was, and I think that definitely is the joy of it, because I've talked about it before where like there was a moment where you bought into it whole ham and immediately hated your character because of it. Because even when you made your character, you were still in that frame of mind of like,
yes,
role-playing is dumb. I don't like any of this, but I want to play. We're going to do it. My character is a mute. He doesn't talk. He doesn't like talking to people. And then as soon as you bought into it, you were like, this character fucking sucks. He can't talk to anybody. I can't role-play at all. Everyone else is role-playing. This is stupid.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that was, and like everything going forward from that has been like these heavily role-play driven characters where like you're very involved in the story, and like that's what you want. That's what you want to get out of players. And none of that would have happened had you not sort of just let shit happen, let cool moments, let stupid moments happen with your characters, and just let it not go the way that it's supposed to go. I recently just reran the starter kit where the group of people went through the big sign that says, this is where the boss is, and walked into the room, and fucking like, he has a familiar who's a rat who's supposed to warn him, but like the bear eats it, and like all these other things happen, and like they have like a proper stand-up fight with this guy. And, this was after they party wiped as soon as they got into the Red Brand hideout, which was fucking hilarious. Because they alerted every single guard in the place, and they had to fight every single creature that was in the place in like one big fight. So they all got wiped. And then so I obviously didn't want to end the campaign, so I put them all in like the prison cells. And so like, it went a totally different direction. It was not the same encounter. It was not the same stuff. It was entirely different. And they played it more the sort of the standard way, where they, instead of killing him, they captured him, they interrogated him, they got a bunch of stuff, they brought him back to Sildar Hellwinter, and like he's gonna go face justice. We're like, and then afterwards I told them the story about how like you fell through the hole in the wall and like immediately murdered him, and then you guys had no idea where anything was. You had no idea about the Black Spider. You had no idea about any of the stories. You didn't know where Gundren was. And then you had to like go wander around for like 3 solid sessions doing every side quest imaginable until you wrote on a sign in Druidcraft, yo, where the druid's at. And then that guy showed up and he was like, hey, it's good to see another druid. You guys looking for Cragmaw? Northwest. And then you guys ran off to the fucking castle. Oh, man. We were going to do some TV talk, but we're about 2 hours now. So that has been Jaded Gamercast for this week. My name is Lang.
I'm Nathan.
Have a good one.
Cheers.